All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Spencer Sutton, and I've got my two co-hosts with me, Matthew Whitaker and Gray Hall. Guys, welcome back to the show.
What's up, Spence? I think it's been a long time since we've all been on the show, so glad to have Gray back after a 1 or 2 week hiatus. What's up, Gray?
Glad to be back post-COVID. Hopefully can make it through without coughing. But yeah, glad to have the crew back together. It's been a couple of weeks since we've all been doing this, and super excited to have another Denver guy on the podcast today. We're stoked to talk to Terrance. So Terrance, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed getting to know you and Matthew over the years, and really honored to be here and excited to talk about real estate investing and hopefully some other interesting topics.
Terrance is like a rock star in this industry and has been in the multifamily world, really focused on value add real estate. And so we've really enjoyed watching your career as you've grown your business and scaled your business. And you use a lot of some of the same techniques we use around social media marketing. So we see what you're doing out there and admire what you're doing. But what I would love for you to start out with, Terrance, is just kind of give the audience some context. Tell them like your journey, your story, how you got into real estate investing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about our country is that, there's so much opportunity, right? And, real estate is one of those areas where there's unlimited opportunity if you hustle, you're focused, and you can apply yourself, right? And so I'm a big fan of real estate and, having grown up in a third world country, my mom's from Colombia, South America. My dad was from Canada. So two immigrants, met at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And my mom, fell in love, had a family. I was their first child. And, they were very focused on their faith and then education, right? And my mom, coming from a third world country, really believed that like education was the way to get out of, what she saw, in Colombia, which was a lot of poverty. And so, that was really the focus growing up. I was homeschooled as a child, spent a lot of time in Colombia. I went to school there, half the year, all the way till 8th grade. And, I think that gave me a lot of perspective and just a lot of appreciation for our country and like how good we have it and how much opportunity there is here. And, so I think that was one of the first things, just having that worldview. And, I had the opportunity to play college basketball at Calder Christian. And I like to say they paid me to sit on the bench and do everyone's homework. So I was the guy that was doing people's homework, letting the people that played, making sure that they were academically eligible. So that was my role. But I did get a chance to play college basketball. It was an amazing opportunity. Really enjoyed it. And, in college, my two best friends and I started a company called OxyFresh Carpet Cleaning. We franchised it. We actually sold a few franchises in your sweet state of Alabama.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Roll Tide.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully Roll Tide. That's right. Hopefully they're still crushing it. But that was my first experience into entrepreneurship, business ownership. I was 21. We were all roommates and, we were just trying to figure it out. Had no idea what we were doing, but we were very passionate. We had a plan and we really stuck to that plan and executed. So that was my first experience in business. We started this company, we franchised it. We had a moderate amount of success. We sold, maybe 180 to 200 franchises in the first couple of years. We were growing really quickly and I had made a couple dollars, through that. And then 2007 and 8 happens, right? And, real estate's crashing. What's interesting is we were actually doing really well while the rest of the country was kind of crashing. So I didn't really feel it personally. But one of my other college teammates came to me in late 2007 and said, hey, there's this thing called a foreclosure. You can buy these houses. People aren't paying their mortgage. Banks are taking them. The city or the county, sells them. If you bring cash, you can buy these houses at a deep discount. And as the kind of the business side or opportunistic side, I was like, man, that sounds like a great trade. I need to get into that. And so I was one of his first investors. We bought a house in early 2008 for maybe you call it $60,000 in a Denver suburb. That house now is worth like $600,000, right?
Wow.
We got that for $60,000.
Should have held on to that.
I know. Yeah. If I would have had better people around me, I probably would have held them. Yeah. So that's the thing. You're right. Hindsight's 2020. So you look back, you're like, man, I wish I would have held all of those. We ended up doing like 600 flips between 2008 and 14 and didn't hold almost any of them. But, we knew, so we cut our teeth there. And that was my first experience into real estate. And it was, it was fascinating. It was more like a transaction, right? It was a trade. We got to buy things for X. We'd paint and clean back then. Back then you could spend like $2,000 or $3,000, paint and carpet, put a sign up, and then the really smart investors would come and buy it and hold them for rentals. You're probably managing some of those now from the people that we sold them to that were really smart, right? They knew what they were doing. We thought we were smart, making $20,000, $30,000 in 90 days, and the guys that were really smart bought them, held them, and have refinanced 4 times and 10x their money. But that was kind of my first experience into real estate, and that was I don't really at that point I don't think I really understood real estate. Didn't understand cap rates. Didn't understand cash flow, depreciation, really any of the financial terms that we would say are kind of more common to us now, being in it full time. It was just more of a trade for me. Like, I can buy something for X, put Y into it, and get, a larger sum back, and we could do it in a short amount of time, and the velocity of capital. And so that was, to answer your question, that was my first experience into real estate. And, we had a really good run. We flipped a bunch of homes, and, we learned a lot. But that was my first experience was flipping houses and buying for a bunch of foreclosures at the public trustee sale.
Matthew, you and I got in about 4 or 5 years too early, and Terrance got in at the right time.
He did. A lot of I know some banks that actually started during that recession time, and they didn't have any real estate loans, so they just took off like rocket ships. And all the banks that had real estate loans were stuck, just like us. We were stuck with a bunch of houses we didn't want. And look, one of the things that's interesting, Terrance, you brought up is just around vision. And one of the stories I like to tell is during that time, we put together a fund to buy 50 homes, and we just felt like, man, we are the smartest people ever. Like 50 homes, that's incredible. And then some of my peers that were out there putting together 12,000 homes. And so it shows the idea of seeing things bigger. Like, right. There are people that were in similar positions as me. They were out thinking 12,000, and I thought 50 was big. So just thinking through the lens of seeing the world bigger, I think is a really important trait to have especially as you're getting started. So that kind of, what years was that you were doing all those flips?
It was like 2008 to 14 is when we started in 2008. We're doing about 100 a year. And then by 2012, 13, 14, a lot of the funds and probably some of your clients now started to enter the market. American Homes for Rent, Blackstone. I mean, a bunch of big buyers had really cheap capital, really long money. We did not have that long of money. And, so we got priced out of the market pretty quickly. Yeah, I think we probably bought our last foreclosure in 2015. So it really started to wean off 2012, 13, 14. But, we had an epic run. I learned a lot. We really started to learn how construction, having your own set of subs could be an advantage, and really understanding construction and the process and systems around that. And, understanding the scope based on the neighborhood. So a lot of the fundamentals I would say that I've taken to grow our multifamily platform now, I think I cut my teeth on then, but it was, I think to go back to what you talked about perspective, some of the people that when I was doing flips, to your point, we were flipping homes thinking we were, geniuses, and other people were buying multifamily, and they were buying 100, 200, 300 unit apartment buildings for $10,000 a door. Right. In Denver. Yeah. Now those buildings are worth $300 a door. Right. And so it's either having the right upbringing, having the right mentorship, or the right apprentices. Right. I mean, I think reading and who you surround yourself with is so valuable. Right. We were kind of in our little bubble. I didn't really have older, wiser people around me that were yeah, this is good, but maybe there's something else better where you could add multiple zeros for the same amount of effort and energy. Right. And so, that's one of the things that I love to talk about today is who do you surround yourself with? Get a mentor, be an apprentice, sometimes working for free and going slower, but getting that perspective and, maybe that golden nugget that's oh, wow, I could go buy a 100 unit apartment building and flip 100 apartments versus 100 single family homes and add multiple zeros, right. And get depreciation. But you just didn't, we didn't have the experience or the network or the know-how to even understand that at the time. Right now, looking back, it's oh yeah, we had the capital. We had, all we had to do was just think a few steps ahead, right? Chess. Yeah. But that's one of the things that I like to, I think is so important is, wherever you're at in your real estate journey, getting around the right people, right? Listening to the right podcast, reading the right book, having the right mentor or coach can really be life-changing. And I think accelerate, your process or your journey in real estate or whatever you're trying to do, in your journey of, financial freedom or wealth creation.
And so talk about your pivot. Invitation Homes comes in, starts buying all the houses in Denver. All of a sudden, it's harder to find. You're getting squeezed out of the market. What was next steps after that?
So a couple of things were going on parallel to that. So I was one of the first investors, we were flipping, and then we had an anchor investor that we ended up raising money from. And then I connected some different operators around the country. So we were flipping homes in like Florida, Indiana, Vegas, LA, and kind of that was my role. So I really wasn't in the day-to-day. I was actually, at that time, I became a full-time sports agent, right? So I was, a basketball player in college. Two of my best friends, went on to play in the NBA. I started to work with them. I started to build a network of college coaches, and I was really passionate. I don't know if any of the listeners remember the show called Entourage. There was a guy named E, who was like the guy that helped like do his business dealings and negotiate for him and kind of do, was still his best friend. And that was kind of my role. I was 24, 25, 26, had a bunch of energy, a bunch of, ambition. And I felt like I could be that, right? I think, I understood the game of basketball. I had a lot of business experience to that point compared to other people my age. And so, and these guys trusted me. And so that was really like my passion. Obviously I did not become E. We ended up getting crushed, but had an amazing experience in sports, got fired a lot, heard no a lot, had to really get comfortable with, what it's like to, finish second and third a lot. And, so I think, just from like starting a company, having, some moderate success at a young age, right in college, and then started to buy homes and making, a lot of money, you kind of get this, belief like, I can do anything I do is going to work. And then you start to have some failures. You're like, oh, wait, it's really not that easy. Life is really hard. Business is hard. All these things are really difficult. And so, getting into sports, I like this thing, like some of the most talented people you will ever meet are either professional sports agents or Division I assistant coaches, right? To be at Alabama and a football coach or, a basketball coach, you are not only good at basketball and understanding of X and O's, but you are an amazing communicator, like charismatic, smooth, and, all the things, right? And so most people don't understand that. Like if you're a Kentucky and you're a college basketball coach, you are one of the best salesmen in the world, right? You are one of the best salesmen. You can go into any living room in the country, now in the world, right? Because they're recruiting internationally. And you can get that mom to say, I'm going to send my son to your university. And it's so insanely competitive. These schools and these agents have unlimited resources. And it was just mind blowing to me, the amount of competition, how talented the competition was and how like cutthroat, that business is. And so, there's a ton of great movies about being sports agents and, they're all, like just a tip of the iceberg in terms of how competitive, how hard, and, just what that's like. And so it was an amazing experience. And that really taught me, so I was a sports agent during this time, the foreclosure market's drying up. And then I moved back to Denver. So at the time I was living in Los Angeles, I moved back to Denver. I was dating my now wife, really wanted to have a family. I got fired by two of my top clients that were in the NBA, just like soul crushing, right? You spend all this time with them, your best friends. They don't even call me. They send me a fax. You get a fax. Yeah. You wake up to a fax that says, from an attorney. Yeah, go ahead.
Will you explain to the audience, because half of them are probably too young to know what a fax machine is?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't even know. That's one of those things like when your kid asks you to explain certain things, like, it's like, how do you explain that? Yeah, I don't know. It's like a telephone that makes a weird noise and it spits out a piece of paper. Anyways, so it was really, really brutal, learned so much through that failure, through those experiences of just like getting your heart ripped out from under you. And, it was really, really tough. So then I moved back to Denver, and I was basically like, if you can picture this, like you're dating someone you really care about and you're like, okay, how am I going to provide for this person so that we can get married and have a family? And that was kind of where I was. Like I had made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, felt like I had all these relationships, all this experience and energy and all these dreams. And I was like, man, what am I going to do? So I moved back to Denver, moved in with my best friend who was still playing in the NBA at the time. And I really, spent time like journaling, praying, and really just kind of analyzing, like, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? And what do I want, the rest of my life to look like? Right. And that was like 2013 when that happened. And so that was parallel with, the foreclosures ending, which is how I was making money at the time. So all these things were colliding. And I was, reading some books. I was listening to Bigger Pockets. And I really came up with this idea that, I knew how to build relationships. I knew how to create opportunity and bring people together. That was kind of my three things. Like, I could build relationships and trust quickly. I could bring people together and create opportunity. And so putting those together, I was like, hey, I think I want to go full-time into real estate myself. And I think I want to do things that create passive income. The one thing I learned from flipping was every time you sell a deal, that's great. You made a couple bucks, right? You made 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever the number is, right? But you have to go do it again in order to create income, right? And I was like, we kind of felt like a hamster on a wheel. You're doing it, and the taxes were pretty.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, the taxes are a lot. So it's like, so I was looking at what you were left with, right? After 600 flips and having partners and taxes, you're not left with that much, but it was a lot of work and a lot of energy, exhausted. And I was like, how can I take that same energy, apply it to a building, and then it continue to pay me? And I already understood what residential homes need to look like from flipping. I already kind of had some relationships with some subs, and I understood the capital stack enough to be like, I think I can just start buying smaller multis. Again, to your point, instead of buying fourplexes and eightplexes, if I would have been buying 40 or 80 unit buildings, it would, things would look a little different today. But that's where I started. I started buying fourplexes and eightplexes. I started, meeting with, residential realtors and just saying, hey, look, I've got capital. Here's what I want to do. These are the neighborhoods. I can close quickly. And I was able to take the skills that I learned from being a sports agent in terms of being able to build relationships quickly and build rapport and trust quickly and make decisions quickly, right? And so I was able to take that, and I think that really helped me to be able to create a lot of opportunity in a short amount of time, right? I could meet with a realtor. I could be really precise about what I wanted. I had a really clear buy box that was defined. I had the funding in place, and I was able to then from there start to generate some deal flow. And then, we went from buying 4 unit to 8 unit to 20 unit, 100 unit, 200 unit buildings. And, we've kind of progressed and grown. And, so that's really the genesis, right? Is it started with, hey, I want to build something a little more passive that's going to continue to produce income and me not having to continue to go and stay on that hamster wheel.
Terrance is highlighting one thing I've said it a million times on this podcast. Like, there's 3 things you've got to do to be successful in real estate. And you've basically said all 3 of them. One is hustle. You said that really early in the podcast. People that are successful in real estate hustle. The second thing is relationships. So if you hustle and build relationships, then you're going to be successful. And the third thing boils down to reputation. And that's really about longevity, right? Hustle and building relationships will get you started, but then reputation will keep you in this business for long periods of time. I'd be curious, because you said hustle and relationships. Talk a little bit about, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but talk a little bit about how reputation has allowed you to reputation has such a long tail to it, right? And how you probably have the same investors. My guess is raising capital today is way easier than it was in 2016. You probably just pick up the phone or send out an email these days.
Yeah, I think in the last 90 days, I think everything has gotten difficult, right? Interest rates are up. We're at war.
Wait, Terrance, you're supposed to be saying how easy it is. I was setting you up.
Yeah. I wish nothing's easy right now. And honestly, I think, your story, the same thing. It's like anytime you're trying to build wealth or do something really valuable, it's really hard in the micro, right? On a micro level, it feels like you're just getting punched in the face over and over. On a macro level, it all makes sense, right? You're building something you really believe in and allows you to have the freedom and to spend time with your loved ones and have amazing experiences. But no, it's been, I think that reputation, I just think it comes down to kind of, just a core principle of character, right? I think, the way you treat people, and I think just fundamentals, right? If you go back to sports, just blocking and tackling. Like if you can do if you can do what you're going to say, what you say, right? If I tell someone, hey, I can close on this date, I think early on, that was a real big thing. Like brokers knew, hey, if Terrance says he's going to close in 14 days, he's going to close in 14 days. And unless it's out of his control. If he says he's going to deliver earnest money tomorrow, he's delivering it. If he says he's going to be here at 8 a.m., he'll be here at 8 a.m. If he says, hey, I'm going to pay you back, whatever, he's going to pay me back. And so I just think like, that's probably one of the biggest things in real estate and in the community and wherever you're investing or whatever you're looking to do is you just got to be a person that does what they say they're going to do. And if you do that, I think compound that over multiple years, I think that's really where you can get your biggest wins. And I just think even about our relationship, like you and I have never done a deal together, right? But we've met a handful of times, always had great interactions. I think you've introduced me to people. I've tried to introduce you to people. And then, my phone rings one night, and I don't know if you remember this, my phone rings one night and one of our investors who's, we've done really, really well with and built a really, healthy relationship. He calls me and says, hey, I just, the property management company I'm with just sold. And they went with it. And the company that bought it was named Evernest. And I don't know who they are. I have no idea. Like, do you know who it is? I'm thinking about switching. He was really nervous, really worried. And I was like, oh yeah, that's my, Matt, he's great. You'll love him. And then, just because of the interactions we had and you doing what you said you were going to do, hey, I'll meet you here at 4:00. I'll introduce you to this person. I'll send you this book. You should listen to this podcast. I just think just like really basic things, never like anything that binding or that formal, but it was just like, hey, you were a good dude. You always did what you said you were going to do. I got a really good feeling from you. I've been following you and seeing what you're doing. And I think I was able to like say, hey, you guys should talk, connect. And I think, you guys have ended up being able to do business. He's a client. And so I just think that's like on a micro level, what reputation can do, right? If you do the right thing, and I think if you're faithful with the small things, right? If you just show up on time, deliver earnest money on time, do what you say you're going to do to the best of your ability, I think that ends up paying huge, huge dividends. And I think that's really where we've grown the most is just being that. Like we were never the biggest. We never had the most money. I never had, I consider myself an underdog, a lifelong underdog. Like I never had, this crazy resume or this big net. I was just like, if you just give me a shot, I will close. Just give me a shot, and then over time you close enough deals, you perform and you do what you say you're enough to where people start to tell other people. And now their brokers are sending you deals and other investors are talking to other investors and bankers are talking to other bankers. And, this thing starts to build momentum. And I'm sure, you can attest, with where you're at, the same thing of just doing the little things really, really well, leads to, I think, some really, much larger opportunities down the road.
And I think one of the things people need to understand is like, it feels like you're doing the little things well for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden, one day it takes off, right? It's right. Like you're grinding. Jim Collins calls it the flywheel. Like you mm-hmm. grind. And then one day it's no extra effort, but all of a sudden your return for each little bit of effort mm-hmm. that you give is exponential. Mm-hmm. I heard a guy say, you essentially work the first part of your life undervalued or making less than you're worth so that you can work the last half of your life making way more than you're worth. And but that most people don't have that ability to focus for long mm-hmm. periods of time and feel like, 3 years, 4 years into it, they give up. When, Jim Collins even highlights that most companies don't even hit anybody's radar for 7 or 8 years. And so you just think about all the times people are grinding till they hit that inflection point. So, and
it's compounding. I mean, Warren Buffett made all his wealth in the last 20 or 30 years. And so if you relate that to real estate investing, buying one single family house that cash flows $500 a month feels like nothing. And so that's why people flip, is because you want the instant gratification of, hey, let me get this money now. And there's a time and a place for that. But what I've seen is over 10 years, rental rates continue to grow. You continue to stack 500 here, 500 here, 500 here. If you're building towards passive income, you got to have that long-term mindset and continually do the right things. I'm sure that you've seen that over the past 10 years where, hey, one deal is not going to get you there, but if you continually hustle and you've got a reputation and you do the right things, not just to get something out of it, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, I think that's an important component of it too, that is what's going to build long-term wealth. And I think that's what people can miss, having a very kind of short time frame, but you've talked about having a long time frame. And I'm sure that you've kind of seen that where, hey, you just got to do this for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, delayed gratification is key. It's not a sexy term. It's not a fun term. I think we live in this microwave society, especially like younger and younger generations, right? They're so used to, if you look at like meme stocks or crypto, we're so addicted to like things that just create instant gratification, make us a lot of money really quick, right? And honestly, that's how a lot of people get hurt. I mean, I've lost money trying to do things quickly or make, just trying to take shortcuts. And it's obviously things we heard from our parents and grandparents. It's like, sometimes slow is fast, right? Sometimes slow is fast. And I was with a guy that's done leasing for us since 2018. He started leasing our first fourplexes, 2017, 18. And, he was in hospitality. He was a bartender, dropped out of college, bartender. It's kind of similar story, like wanted to get married, was dating this gal. So he transitioned, come work with us. And, he was leasing for us 2018, 19, 20, 21, owned zero real estate, right? So watching us do all this real estate, had opportunities to invest, never did, right? And then in the last like 8 or 9 months, the guy is a partner in 8 buildings with us. 8 buildings, like hundreds and hundreds of units, right? But, to your point, in 2017, 18, 19, 20, man, he could have been so discouraged. And I think he was, right? I think he definitely went through those seasons and ups and downs, like, man, is this the right move? Should I have done it? I could have been making more cash being a bartender. And, now, sitting there looking at his journey and hearing him talk about how thankful he is that he stuck with it, He's like, man, it's paid off 100-fold, right? It took 10 times longer than I thought, but it's been 100 times worth it than I ever thought it could be. Being an equity owner in like what we've built together, having the experience and, all of the, I think all of the inner like strength that you develop, that muscle from like having patience, right? You develop in something inside you that's like, if I just did that, I can do this, right? And you continue to grow and you're kind of that step ladder thing. And so I just think that's a great example of what it's like. You can be doing the same things over and over and over for 5 years, right? And see not the results you want. And on the 5th year and first day, it's like, oh my gosh, you see like 200x results, right? And I don't know that you're going to get, maybe it's 10 years or 6 years or 7 years, but I do think that is the right perspective. That's definitely how it's been for me, right? You plant seeds, you water them, and you do it again. And then all of a sudden you look back, you're like, man, I built, I have like a little rainforest and didn't even realize it, So I hopefully that, speaks to some people that are listening to encourage them, like, whatever you're seeking out to do, whatever your goals are, it's just over time, applied patience, persistent patience, and just being like really, I think focused and bought into that, I think does deliver exponential results you can't really imagine, and it's hard to it doesn't really sit on a spreadsheet. You can't quantify it with numbers. You just have to live it and do it. And I think when you're around people that have done it, again, getting back to mentorship, when you're around people that have done it, you kind of see it come to life versus just reading in a book or, hearing about it. It's like, man, I saw it, and so I think that's been pretty impactful for me. And I think to some people on our team as well.
And mentorship's about people reinforcing, yeah, you're on the right path, right? Because when you're doing it for 4 or 5 years and nothing's happening, and they're saying, no, keep going. Like the gold's still there and you're going to get there. And that's what's mentorship, people that have been there before. When we first met, Terrance, it was 2019. And since then, you were very focused on a bunch of value add deals. Talk a little bit about your company and maybe some of your JV partners and how y'all, how you operated from 2019 up until today.
Yeah. So the journey kind of was, I had made a couple bucks. So I had, let's call it in 2013, 14, a couple $100,000 that I had made and saved. And then I had some relationships with some private money lenders that we had done a bunch of deals with. So I had that going for me. And I was able to take those relationships and that capital and apply it to smaller multis. And so that's how we were doing it. I had one of my best friends from college, was very analytical, really good with the books, really good with numbers. And so I kind of recruited him in 2014. I was like, hey, I think I'm going to go build this thing. Why don't you come alongside, partner with me? And so it was really just him and I for 4 or 5 years. Just like we'd buy deals. I would primarily source the deal, put the capital stack together. He would handle all the back office. So I could just focus on what I was good at, which was creating opportunity, putting things together, executing. And we did that maybe 10, 20, 30 times a year from 2014 to 2019 had an epic run, right? The market was going up, interest rates were going down. I mean, we, as much as we could with our own capital, I feel like we really maximized that opportunity with these kind of smaller, mid-sized multifamily. And then in 2019, a couple things happened. Like, we had some delays with construction. A couple guys maybe stole from us. He was going through some things in his personal life. And he came to me maybe like early 2019. It was like, look, I've made, he'd made a bunch of money, and he was like, look, I just want to go play golf, spend time with my family. I want to take a step back. I don't want to work. I basically don't want to work this hard. I love you. I'm supportive of you, but like, you should just buy me out. And so at that time, we just really had like one or two employees, my brother and his brother. My brother was managing stuff for us in Des Moines. His brother was leasing for us in Denver. And I had a few really good people around me. And the conclusion I came to, Matt, was if I wanted to continue, I was going to have to hire basically 5 to 10 people to replace him, right? To replace everything that he was doing, overseeing the legal, the accounting, the bookkeeping, tax, all the stuff. I was going to have to hire a team. In order to hire a team, that was going to be very expensive. I was going to start to have to raise outside capital and, kind of either have a fund or a syndication model that then would, produce fee income. And then I could hire the right people to execute the strategy at scale. And so that's what I started to put together in 2019. 2020, we syndicated maybe 5 or 6 deals. We maybe raised $10 or $12 million in 2020. Then the end of 2020, those had gone well. People came to me and said, hey, we really love this. We think you really have something. We'd like to write bigger checks. Why don't you start a fund? We'll seed it. So I had like maybe 5 families come to me and say, hey, let's build a fund around this strategy of like value add multifamily. When I say value add, I think value add is a really overplayed term. I mean, you see it everywhere now, but value add really to me is we're buying 60s, 70s, 80s, outdated from original owners, right? It hasn't been touched. So same kitchens from like when it was built, nothing's been updated. Legacy rent roll. Most of the rent rolls we see are on paper. You know what I mean? Like they're like no rent roll, no sophistication, no professional management, like true value add, like where you can go in there, update the units and force appreciation through construction and property management. And so, we felt like that was our niche. That was what we knew best. That's where we had the biggest advantage on a risk adjusted basis. And so we decided to do that in Denver and Des Moines and really go deep on that. And so we raised a fund. We raised maybe $30-some million in 2021 and, raised a fund. We bought roughly $120 million in the fund worth of real estate in 2021. 2022, we deployed the fund. Thankfully, we fixed, every deal in the fund had a fixed interest rate below 4, besides one that was, that was funded by a REIT and it had floating rate debt. We had to buy the rate cap. It was a larger deal, so you couldn't get fixed rate debt, and we had to do some construction. And so, thankfully, we were able to buy things at a pretty low basis comparative to today, fix the interest rate, really de-risk it. And then, this year we've just done one-off syndications, with kind of those same, those same families and funds that we've done business with since 2020. And, that's our business now is we feel, we built this platform. The way I like to say it is, if you hear Elon Musk talk about Tesla, what he says is, Tesla's a machine that builds machines. He doesn't say it's like an electric car company or a battery company. He's like, I built this this machine and it builds machines at scale and it's very efficient and I'm able to make more machines cheaper and faster than anybody else. And they're better machines, right? And so that's what I like to say that we've done at VareCo. Similar, right? Is, we built a platform that can eat or onboard any apartment building in Denver and Des Moines and solve all these problems through construction and property management, our infrastructure, and then spit out cash flow to our investors, right? And that's really what it is. We have really taken this model of buying outdated buildings, understanding how to do the construction cheaper and faster, understanding how to lease them up and manage them more efficiently and more economically, and then either refi or sell to then produce a risk-adjusted return. And that's, that's our game. That's what we do. We really are passionate about that. And we also think that, affordable housing is a really sensitive and kind of hot topic right now. And, so typically we're buying in the path of progress, right? So what path of progress just means there's a lot of institutional Class A buildings in the neighborhoods. So we're buying in neighborhoods, Denver and Des Moines, where there's 5, 6, 7, 8 Class A buildings within walking distance, and we're typically $500 to $800, sometimes more, less than the Class A apartment. That's the same size unit. And so, we're able to offer an upgraded kitchen, bathroom, and common areas. It's safe, clean, but it's significantly more affordable than the Class A building in the same location. And, so that's what we do. And, I feel like the team that we put together is, probably something that I'm the most proud of. We put together a team of people that really care and that I feel like are really, really good at what they do. And they're all very passionate about the company and, the culture and the mission that we're on.
Talk about why Denver and Des Moines. Those seems like two completely different markets.
Yeah, it was pretty simple. I mean, it was just like, I was born in Des Moines. We had a really strong network there. My brother lived there. And early on, when I was buying deals in Des Moines before my brother moved back, my dad and I were doing it. And so I just felt like I had a network. I knew the neighborhoods, right? When we were flipping in all these different, like at one time, 2012, 13, 14, we were flipping in like 10 different markets. And you'd look back and say, man, we did way better just in the deals that we managed ourselves in our own backyard. We knew the neighborhoods, we knew the subs, and so you see that over 3 or 4 years, you're like, why are we doing these deals over here? Like, what's the point? So that's kind of the thinking is like, we just knew Des Moines, we knew the neighborhoods, we understood, we knew the banks, we had good broker relationships, we could put together the construction teams. And, so that was that. We also felt like Des Moines had really, over time, right? We've learned that Des Moines has really strong fundamentals, really good positive migration. It's got some recession resistant like pillars of finance and insurance there in the market. And, and I just think it's in terms of like cost of living to quality of life, it's one of the best in the Midwest. It's been growing, I think, faster than almost any market besides Omaha in the Midwest. So Des Moines is really just started because I'm from there, had relationships. And then as Des Moines has grown and kind of evolved, we've been like, hey, this is actually a really attractive market to invest more dollars. And so we've been able to, really grow our, kind of our platform in Des Moines. And then Denver, obviously, went to school here and had a bunch of relationships from doing the flips and, just felt like this was where we had the advantage. We knew the neighborhoods. We were able to build relationships with brokers. And obviously Denver had this insane run up and, attracted a lot of institutional capital after 2012 and 13. And so it just became a market where we're like, man, we need to really focus in our own backyard. So, we're really fortunate because it's kind of, I think, just fortuitous that those were the two markets that I'm from and knew. But I do think that there's some good diversification there because Denver has a lot of rapid appreciation in rents and in like valuations and appreciation. And then Des Moines is just slow and steady, right? Des Moines just grows 1 or 2% a year. But when there's a recession, if you look at 2008 or 9, it never had the big dips like you'd see in Florida or in other Vegas or other major markets like other larger metros seem to have bigger high, peaks and valleys, whereas Des Moines was just really steady. And so from a cash flow perspective, and when you're, investing other people's capital, that seemed to be a really, something that the market had a lot of appetite for and continues to have a lot of appetite for.
And you mentioned you were kind of talked about now you've built this machine. And so I'd like to understand the metamorphosis, call it, from being solopreneur. It was you and your brother and a partner and their brother. Like it was very small operation to building a machine. Like, what did that look like?
Very painful. Very painful.
I'm asking for a friend.
It was not fun. Very hard. I think the number one thing I've learned in this process, I think we have, and this is like a fraction. I should be asking you for advice when it comes to managing people. We have maybe 60 employees, give or take, and then maybe 40 or 50 subs on the construction side. But, what I've learned, and one of the biggest takeaways is just culture. You have to define your culture. I think previous to 2020, when we would need somebody or I needed somebody, I was just like hiring based out of like need or desperation. Like, okay, this person says they can do this. I need to hire. I just need this person today, tomorrow. And, when I hired our current managing director, Philip Price, the first thing that he really challenged me to do was let's define culture and really define like, what's the company that you want to build look like? What are the people you want here? What do you want them to all have in common? Right. And what do you want the mission to be? What does that need? What does that look like? And let's not just talk about it, let's put it down, let's write it down, and let's filter every single hire through culture. Does it fit what you just wrote down and what you're describing, right? And do the people really fit? Do the people that we're hiring fit the company you want to build and what you want it to look like? And, so that was painful coming from someone that, again, like speed was like my thing and like getting a lot of things done in a short amount of time. And so really having to like slow down, journal a lot, talk a lot, and really, poke holes in a lot of things that I had been thinking or thought I believed in. And like, hey, first principles, like, why do I believe that? Why do I really believe that? And so really defining culture, I think, was the one thing, and then hiring people through that filter. And I think that's probably been the biggest game changer from, me and my brother in our garage and my best friend to, now having, I would think, more of a structured platform, with benefits and real employees and real systems and process. Was you got to get the right people, and to have the right people, what they're going to get passionate about and behind and really motivated is by having a culture they believe in. And so you have to be able to define that. And then you have to like remind them of that and find ways to like, bring it back in meetings and all these things. So, but just, coming out. So we were able to define our culture. What's our mission? What are we really about? What solution and what value are we bringing to the market? Why do we exist? Why are we doing this? Those kind of questions. And so I encourage anyone, that's struggling with hiring or, maybe the atmosphere in the office or people's like focus or their buy-in or level of motivation. These are all things that I think every employer struggles with at one season or another. I really think like for us and in my journey in the last couple of years of building this, it's really been getting really crystal clear on culture and what are the people that I want to be around to do this with. And then, hiring through culture versus like resume or connections or any other thing that you could think of, like really hiring for culture above all else.
One of the things I've always admired about you is how transparent you are. Like you're very, if anybody follows you on social media, by the way, you're a great follow. So anybody just search Terrance Doyle on social media and follow him on LinkedIn. That's where I follow you. There may be other ways to do it, but and so you clearly have a passion for like educating people and teaching people. So I'd be curious to hear why that passion. Was it that your mother's like passion about education when you were young that led you to that? I'd be curious, what's led you to this education passion?
Yeah, this is such a great topic. And I hope that you and I can discuss this more offline, but, I think growing up in a lower middle class family where money was like a constraint for everything, money was always coming up in our home. And then you go to college, thankfully, I didn't have a lot of student loan debts because of basketball, but my brother and sister did. And so I remember like being 23, 24, 25, and my brother and sister were getting out of college and they were like, yeah, we have $150,000 in school debt and it's at 5%. I remember running the math, like, how are you going to pay that off? Like you're making 40 at your job or whatever you're making, and your payments are $900 a month after taxes. How do you live? Right. And so I think that was kind of the genesis of it for me, is like when I was 24, 25, just seeing how much college was back then. It's even more now, and how little training there is of like what that actually means to sign that loan document when you're 18 years old that signs you up for debt that even bankruptcy doesn't clear. Right. I don't think most people, like, I think there's very few people that get into student debt that understand what they're signing up for and what the math has to look like to pay that off. Right. And I think that's number one, is just financial literacy. Like seeing what the struggle my brother and sister had with that really motivated me to be like, hey, wait, what's going on? And then you start to understand real estate, right? And you start to understand like leverage and credit cards and lines of credit. And you start to understand like, man, if you just like have a little bit of understanding of how money works and what you can do with owning a home, right? Like just talk about like the programs that governments offer for first-time home buyers, right? And in a market like Denver that appreciates 8% a year, you can get the government to lend you 97, 98, 99% of the home, right? You can buy a home for, under 10,000 down, right? It appreciates at 8% a year. You can sell your primary residence every 2 years tax-free, right? how many people understand that like you can't do anything tax-free, but you can sell your primary residence every 2 years tax-free. And if you live in a market, in any market, the last 10 years, that's going to be a real number. It can be 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. I mean, it's a real number after taxes. That's real money. That's sometimes more than what most people make in a year. Just by doing that, just by owning a home, making some modest improvements and then selling it. Right. And, my wife and I have done that 4 or 5 times and made multiple 7 figures tax-free in the last 10 years. And just in Denver, just buying homes, renovating them, selling them. Right. And then I take that money, I would go buy a 20-unit apartment complex, raise the rents $300 a unit. Right. And then, every $100 at a 6 cap was $18,000. Right. And make, $1 million on that. And so you start to look back and it's like, just by owning a home and understanding home ownership and all the tax benefits that are set up, if you do it the right way, how you can like build this snowball that's like really life-changing, and then you take it a step further and it's like, well, once you have money and a balance sheet, now banks will, like the last time I did a home loan, I didn't even go to a traditional, lender, like a private bank gave me a 10-year fixed interest, 10-year fixed mortgage at interest only at 2.5%. That doesn't even exist for most people, right? But if you understand real estate and money, you understand that there's like certain kind of loan programs that you can qualify for that dramatically change the game. So you can live in a multi-million-dollar house and have a $3,000 monthly payment. Like, you don't learn those kind of things growing up in our current educational system. And I think that's really, just from where I come from, seeing what I've experienced and seeing how it's changed my life and now my brother and sister's life, and hopefully some other close friends of mine now that I've helped do the same thing. It's like, that's, so that's one part of it. It's just financial literacy and student loan debt. And like the value you get from going to college, I just don't think is there. There's certain professions I think that make sense, but I just think that I go back to apprenticeship, like work for someone for free, mentorship, have really good people around you, and stewardship, understand what to do with money. And I think if you do those 3 things, you can change your life. So that's one part of education. And I think the second part, going to higher education, is just understanding skilled labor, right? Day to day, some of the biggest challenge we have is there's not enough skilled labor to do the things we want to do, right? You probably experience the same thing with, doing even just turns of single family homes or the multis, is like, we need more skilled labor. We need more plumbers, electricians, roofers, carpenters, guys that know how to flooring, guys that understand tile, like masonry, all these things, right? Not sexy. Again, not taught in school. Our current education system does not teach the value of owning a business, finding something you really enjoy, like working with your hands, and becoming great at it, right? Mark Cuban, one of my favorite quotes, how to build wealth. Find something you're good at and become great. Find something you're good at, become great. Real simple, right? Real simple, requires a lot of patience, but that's it. It's like, you don't need to go to school, learn something you're not interested in, get in a ton of debt that you don't understand how to pay back, to though get a job that you could care less about to make $50,000, right? You could go work for someone, teach you how to be like the best carpenter in Birmingham, you could go build your own house, build houses for other people, make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and have the life that you never thought you could, right? And so I think trade schools, skilled labor, those are things that I think I want to really change. I'm on a journey, kind of like my life mission, to change the narrative of trade schools, of skilled labor, of like not having to go to college in the traditional route of like, I was in the car with a banker the other day and he was like upset because his son didn't want to go to college. And, I need this guy to give me a loan, so I wasn't going to go that hard at him. But inside I want to be like, bro, you're missing it. You know what I mean? What if your son just wants to like figure out how to code and he writes this computer code, like there's all these other ways now, like Amazon is doing its own certification. I think Google is doing its own certification. Like there's so many ways now. There's a thing I saw on social media the other day. It's like, it's funny how someone can spend 10,000 hours on YouTube and make more money and be better at something than someone that goes to school and gets $200,000 in debt, right? Mm-hmm. Like YouTube is like, the new university. You can learn almost anything you want within reason on YouTube and become amazing at it. It's just about how hard you want to apply yourself, how hard you want to work. And so I just think those kind of things, I could go on this for hours. It's my wife gets annoyed with me, but I just think that's a conversation that needs to be shared more and people need to be talking more about, because I really think financial literacy, changing the narrative of trade schools, skilled labor versus like having to go and just certifications, like there's just so many other ways to create generational wealth and, freedom, financial freedom than having to go the traditional route. And I honestly, I think that's something that needs to be more talked about.
So tell me, go ahead.
Let me just tell a quick story that'll make this resonate, hopefully, with the audience. So we had a grass vendor here in Birmingham, and we gave him all of our yards. So you're talking, I mean, he at one point a couple of years ago came and sat down with me, and he was talking about, essentially I'm making so much money, over $100,000 a year. I'm working, in Birmingham, you work from probably March to October. I mean, the grass growing season is pretty long, but I'm making over $100,000 a year, but I want to know what to do with it. Teach me how to invest. And so what I said is, look, you need to go out and just like buy a house every year, just buy one house with your extra money. And, you can physically go do the work to it. You can physically manage that house. And if you do that for 10 years, you're going to have essentially, you're going to get small loans with each, but in 10 years, you're probably going to have 5 or 6 paid off. And then you're just going to keep doing this over and over and over again. And then, so I thought, man, this guy's got it made, right? Like didn't go to college. He has a, he does have some client concentration with us, but we're not changing grass vendors as long as he shows up and cuts the grass.
Right.
And he sends me a text in May and says, in April, he says, hey, I'm not cutting grass anymore. I've decided to go back to college. And I thought, yeah, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, clearly somebody told him you're supposed to go to college. Yeah. That's what smart people do. And I'm thinking the reason people go to college is so they can make $100,000 a year. You're already there. Like you're already making,
you hit the lottery. Yeah.
And so now he's going to get out and I don't know if he's paying for it or not, but now he's going to get out and make $40,000 or $50,000, make half of what he was making, and maybe crawl back to that over the course of 10 or 15 years. But it's just, I just don't understand it. So
I don't think I've seen Matthew that mad over this topic as anything else in the past 5 years when he was telling me about this. But yeah.
Well, he's just going to take our path, Matthew. We were making a ton of money, and then 2008 came and we made no money. So
yeah, I was about to tell. Terrance said, I was making a ton of money, then I lost a ton of money. I was like, we were on that same path.
Yeah, we get you. We get you, Terrance. We understand. Yeah, I'd like to know, like, what are you doing with your passion? Because I've seen you lately on social media talking about apprenticeship, mentorship, stewardship. Do you have something in the works that you're preparing? Love to hear about it.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time on this. We've kind of built a team, that kind of shares the same vision. And, thankfully, because we did it, we've done a decent job with culture, and we have a really amazing group of, directors. I don't have to spend as much day to day on the apartment business as I used to. And so it's really freed me up to spend time on, my passion, which really, I think I've really narrowed into, building relationships with people and being able to share the story that I've experienced in real estate to inspire them, motivate them, educate them to be able to go and do the same thing. And so, we've spent the last basically year trying to build the infrastructure of, what we call the value tribe, which is just going to be a tribe of people, a group of people around the country, around the world. I got people, I think in Colombia that'll probably join, but around the world that, want to learn about real estate, want to learn about finance, understand how money works, understand how cash flow works, how finance, all the things, right? The fundamentals of being able to either buy a single family home or an apartment building or anything in between, and, help them along their journey. Right. And so we're going to have, a Discord channel. We're going to have, weekly calls. And then I'm going to have like a smaller kind of inner circle that I'm going to call like the MVPs of people that are in that, we call it the rising stars of value tribe, but like, this larger group. And, we're going to be able to like pick people out of that I'm like, hey, I want to partner with you. The people that I think, really apply themselves, are focused, really fit the culture and values that I have, and then be able to partner with them. And I think take it a step further where we'll actually help them raise money, do multifamily deals, help them get the debt, and, help them manage the property, all those kind of things. And so I'm only going to take on, that right now I already have 3 or 4 people that I've been helping for the last year, but I'm going to take on 3 or 4, of those people at a time. And I think that's something that brings me a great amount of satisfaction and fulfillment. and I think really is something that I enjoy, is the building relationships with talented people that have the same kind of desire I had. And maybe they didn't have, the same kind of doors open that I have. And so I can kind of be that mentor for them and provide the platform that allows them to go. And, I think one of my favorite taglines is just maximize your potential, right? It allows them to maximize their potential, allows them to realize their dreams and do, and accomplish the things they want to. And so that's really, what we're going to set out to do. And I'm really excited about it. Like I said, I think I really enjoyed, and, the few people that I've been able to help throughout the years do kind of what we talked about, with their own money and with single family and multifamily has really brought me a lot of joy. And, I'm looking to do that at scale. And so that's what we're going to be launching here in the next, 30, 45 days. And we actually have a Discord now. So I think hopefully we can put in the show notes, but we have a Discord. I'm in there every week. I'm talking about articles I'm reading, talking about tips and tricks. I'm talking about things I'm learning, failures. And I was in there the other day talking about how I just got outbid on two deals that I really wanted, issues I'm having with lenders. So everything I'm going through, I'm talking with this group of people, kind of sharing war stories, helping encourage them, and hopefully just inspire people to be able to do the things that, they're dreaming about and help that become a reality.
That's great. That's awesome. So you're launching in 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
And so if you're following Terrance on any kind of social media, he'll be talking about it.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Terrance, has been awesome, man. I appreciate your time. This has been great. Getting to know you. You and I didn't know each other, but I appreciate your time, sharing your story and your passion for all things real estate, finance. And so thanks, man.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Yeah. Next time you're in Denver, let's grab coffee or get together. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And I really think highly of, the company you guys have built and what you guys are doing. And, every time we've been together, I've left feeling really energized and fulfilled. So keep doing what you guys are doing. And I'm a big fan of you guys.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you have enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.